I have to just start this by saying thank you to Disney for getting this one right. And I'm just gonna rip off the Band-Aid and just say right off the top that this villainous origin story for Cruella is not at all how they played the game with Maleficent and her origin story. Maleficent went a completely different route in subverting expectations by honestly changing almost the entire story to fit a new narrative of making her a fairy godmother and not a villain whatsoever, whereas in Cruella's case, we don't lose what makes her deliciously evil, nor do they change the story or characters in order to make her a completely sympathetic good guy and therefore lose everything we find honestly very fun about her being a Disney villain. And it develops this character naturally and organically that ultimately lead her to becoming the person that we kind of all know. And I give so many props to Disney for exploring the origin of Cruella without completely losing everything that made her an iconic villain. Another thing I loved about this movie is that Disney went dark for it. Yes, it has a PG-13 rating, but this movie definitely felt a lot more mature. It felt like it was made for adults. This movie is like the Joker meets Devil Wears Prada. It's the Joker in how you take an iconic character known for being a villain and exploring their origin as to how they got to where they are and how they became perceived as some sort of villain. And then there's the Devil Wears Prada side where it's in the fashion world and what evolves into a rivalry between two strong-willed women that is very reminiscent of the Devil Wears Prada. Emma Stone is iconic in this role. Now, she is so juicy as hell, and she's electric. She is campy without being dumb. There is a fabulous type of camp that is acceptable, I find, and there's a very fine line between fabulous and obnoxious, and she is campy to the point of being fiercely fabulous about it. She is over the top sometimes, but in the type of way to where you just want to act and talk like her immediately as the movie is over. And just like how Kathryn Hahn has become a household name because of her portrayal as Agatha Harkness in WandaVision, she's also become a meme. I argue that Emma Stone is going to become that much more of a household name. She's already very well known, but I feel like this role of Cruella is definitely upping her meme game. This role, I think, just sent her over the top and has made her that much more of a household name because of how fucking fabulous she is. And I loved that this movie gave a thoughtful, organic, and interesting explanation for Cruella's madness and why she is the way she is. And it felt very earned, and it felt very clever. Her character made that much more sense to me, seeing the reason why she is the way she is, how she evolved to be who she was, and the motivations behind it, the influences behind it. I completely bought into it, and I thought it was ingenious. Now, there are two powerhouse Emmas in this. We've talked about Emma Stone, so let's talk about Emma Thompson. And oh my God, did she chew the fucking scenery in this movie. It is really fun to play a bad guy, and you can just tell that Emma Thompson is having one hell of a good time. She wears Wicked very well. She is so fierce. She is like Miranda Priestley, but honestly, let's bring that all the way up to pure evil. Emma Thompson is a formidable foe. She and Emma Stone are so commanding. It is their movie. Their dynamic is unbeatable. You can tell she's having a fucking good time just being that bitch. One of those villains where you kind of can't take your eyes off of her. You kind of love to hate her. And I'm so happy to report that every single actor does a great job and every single character is good. There is no weak link. There's no waste of time. There's no waste of space. I give a special kudos to the actors playing Jasper and Horace. I did love the dynamic they had with Cruella. I loved the friendship and companionship and camaraderie that is established within their origins. I do also want to give this movie praise because there is legit LGBTQ representation in this movie in the character of Artie, played wonderfully by John McCrae. I hope I'm saying his last name right. This is the most out and proud LGBTQ character introduced into a movie who plays a key part who is not just a cameo, who's not just in one scene. He has a key role. His sexual orientation is very well established. It's not just assumed. His character is fierce, and I love how he played off of Cruella, and I am really excited to see more of him if there is a potential sequel, which I feel like they do set up. Now, as for the overall story, I thought it was really, really good. If you like Devil Wears Prada, again, like in the fashion world, I think you'll really, really enjoy this movie because it is a very fashion-forward, fashion world movie at its core. I loved how this movie had twists, it had surprises, and it genuinely shocked me. I literally gasped a couple times because I could not believe that they were going there and that they went there, and I loved being on the edge of my seat and really not knowing what the hell was going to happen. How was this going to play out? Because so often, Disney movies can be very predictable, and I'm not saying that this movie is completely mysterious. There are certain things that I feel like people might argue they did see coming from a mile away, but I personally was on the edge of my seat, especially in the last act, and I loved being on the edge of my seat, not knowing how this is going to play out, and thank God it played out well and stuck the landing, in my opinion. This movie never felt lazy. The writers did a really, really good job in developing these characters and developing the story, in building these relationships, but also diving into the complex mind of Cruella herself and that whole character study and how to define, if you can define, that gray area of very morally questionable or with good intentions but manipulative and being willing to hurt or use people at the same time, because it's a feat to tackle a twisted, fucked up Disney villain like Cruella de Vil, and I feel like the writers and the directors were given the freedom needed in order to present a clever story that was able to build the character up in a way that there are moments where it can be relatable, there are moments where you can sympathize, but you're not completely letting her off the hook. It's a complex character study, and I really appreciated what the creative team brought for this character. I can't talk about this movie without talking about the fashion, and I'll be damned if this movie it does not take home the Oscar for best costume design for a film. It better get fucking nominated. I feel like it's a sure bet it'll at least get nominated, but the fashions are, at the risk of sounding super gay, to die for. They are fabulous. The fashions are out of this world. At the very least, if there's one thing that you cannot knock this film for, and that is the fashions. As you can tell, I really enjoyed this movie. It's not a perfect movie, though. I will say, with obviously without spoilers, within the very beginning, there are some character interactions or character introductions that did feel a little bit rushed in setting up the film. And the final thing I will say is that I don't think this movie will be universally loved by everyone. As I've said, I don't think it's made for kids. And like I've said, it takes inspiration from movies like Joker and Devil Wears Prada. And so if it's really not your cup of tea, the Joker, Devil Wears Prada, or anything as I've described within the character study piece or the fashion setting, it may not be your cup of tea. Overall, Cruella met, if not exceeded, my expectations. I was so excited, a little bit nervous, if I'm being honest with you, and I'm so incredibly happy to report that I had such a great time with this movie. I would definitely rank it among my top 3 of my favorite of the live action remakes. It's definitely up there with Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast for me, so Cruella would round out my top 3 for sure. Cruella was just completely fabulous and fierce and twisted and fun and juicy and one hell of a good time that I highly recommend you check out, and I can't wait to revisit again. I'm going to give Cruella an A-. And that's my review for you. You can currently see Cruella in theaters or on Disney+. I did see it in a theater, and I will say, with the amount of fashion, the production design, it is a beautiful movie to see on the big screen. So if you feel safe doing it and you're able to, I do recommend checking out Cruella in theaters. That in mind, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about the movie if you've seen it, so feel free to leave those comments down below. As always, thank you all again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Ryan Bamey, signing off. Bye everyone.